Gentlemen, take it away.
Well, thank you, Casey, for the invitation. Delighted to be here. And thank you to the Friends for the supporting this and a whole bunch of other super cool programs that the library system offers. Just really like long-suffering volunteers, just putting in long hours, selling huge amounts of used books at $1 each or so. So terrific. Good. Yeah, so we're here to really have what I hope is a casual discussion about interesting things with interesting people. So put questions in the chat, and if we're not addressing it, let me know. But I am just excited to be here. So yeah, so Jason, good seeing you again. COVID has kind of kept everyone from being in the flesh for a while. So look forward to seeing you soon. Great, well, let's start off. I've been participating in HATM for a while, but what the heck is it? Why don't we start there?
Man, that's a great question. What is Historians of the Movies? I'm still figuring that out myself, and we're just shy of 3 years into it now. Historians of the Movies basically is a weekly watch party. Actually, we're the oldest, longest running watch party, to my knowledge, on the internet. Every Sunday night for almost 3 years now, people from around the world, history lovers, movie lovers, lovers of movies about history, get together, and we live tweet a film together. Typically, initially, this was originally thought of as the idea is that a bunch of historians were going to get together and watch these movies and kind of talk about why they're important and so forth. But what it really became was this community, this large international community where people can come together, enjoy this time together in a space that is safe, it's welcome, it's inviting, and it's fun, because so much of the internet, so much of our lives, especially in this COVID era in 2021, it's very difficult. It can be rough on all of us. We're all kind of cramped up in together and so forth. But we love movies, and it's our way to escape together and have these conversations about things that we share together, that bind us together. And that's what we've been doing now for almost 3 years.
Thank you. So just functionally pushing play at the same time.
Yeah.
And then everybody turns to their phones and has a discussion over Twitter while watching Tom Hanks or whatever it is on screen. Terrific. So such a cool idea that's getting a lot of traction and, a lot of participants in a bunch of countries. How does something like this even get started?
Totally by accident is what happens. I had moved back down to Florida. I lived in Florida for a while and then left for a longer while to go finish my doctoral coursework at Minnesota. But I left Minnesota in 2017 once my doctoral coursework was complete. I moved down to Florida so I could, finish up my research and so forth. And that was really great. I could come down, I could write about Florida in Florida. If you're going to write about Florida, you really need to be here to experience it. Not just, you just can't write in an office, as you really have to experience the place that you're writing about, and which is great. I was living in Highlands County at the time. And one of the downsides about doing that, though, is missing that collegiality that I had on campus at the University of Minnesota. Simply put, there was no longer hallways or elevator rides or classrooms or workshops in which I would confer with my colleagues. And, I kind of looked towards social media as a way of kind of reconstructing my academic community, if you will. There were other academics, other professors, historians, so forth, scientists that I like to, learn about GAR or whatever on. And social media became that outlet where I, having moved to this town where I didn't really know anybody, could at least have some connection with other folks. And in the process of doing that, you start to have these conversations with other historians, and you find out that we all have this joint love of a single film, National Treasure. And it's the weirdest thing, right? Because, archaeologists, they've got Harrison Ford, they've got Indiana Jones. Historians, we've got Nicolas Cage, we've got Benjamin Franklin Gates. Okay, let's do it anyway, right? So we all love National Treasure. I'd seen that it was on Netflix one day, and I was like, hey, tweeted out, I was like, oh, it's on Netflix one day. We should all watch it. Okay, let's do that. Set it up. I don't know what watch party is. I never heard of a watch party, but okay, sure, let's do it. So I said, everybody, let's get together Sunday night. We'll watch it at 8 p.m. We'll have a great time. We'll live tweet it. And we do, right? And we get together, we start live tweeting. There's a bunch of historians who are watching. This is in the middle of in summer 2018. There's not a lot going on. The writers of National Treasure join in. A bunch of prominent historians from Yale and elsewhere show up to tweet along. And we're just having a blast. And it's fun. And we're reacting to this film. And it's a lot of fun. And we finish the movie. It's like, hey, it's a great time. We should do it again sometime. Well, next week. Okay, sure. So, okay, I guess we'll do Lincoln, right? So we do Lincoln the next week. And then afterwards, we do Marie Antoinette. And afterwards, I think we do Coco. And then we do Trading Places. And really, after that, we're off to the races. And every week, and in some cases, more than once in a week, we've done a film now for almost 3 years. And they have varied since then. And it's really kind of morphed into a different thing than maybe it initially turned out to be. Because I had initially kind of thought about this as historians spend all of our time deep in thought and thinking about things that matter and blah, blah, blah. We don't, but whatever. It's what other people think we do. I thought it would be a great way to turn off my brain for 2 hours on a Sunday night. And what it really turned out to be was his opportunity to really kind of take a film and talk about an era, talk about a subject that matters, a life that matters, our lives that matter through film. Because one of the things about history is this. People think, oh, you're a historian, you talk about the past. No, I don't. I use the past to talk about the present and our future. How do we make our lives better in the future? How do we think about our lives now by looking at the past, right? And using these films and how we internalize them, how we use these movies and how they affect us has been this really powerful motivator in understanding like just who we think we are as human beings. So that's really what that's become. And we've been going now for a while. And this weekend we're doing the Oscars. So it'll be a week where we can sit back and snark away.
Thank you. So you're telling me that history is not just kind of about old dead people. Like if that's so, like what business do historians have straying from their lane and watching movies about, something contemporary, or I don't know, you mentioned Coco, or I mean, HATM has tackled a bunch of movies that don't feel like history movies. So help me understand, like what's your criteria? Why do you pick what you pick?
Okay, well, the very first thing I think about when I think about all of this, and maybe I should back up and say, I don't know that there's anything that's not anyone's lane, right? I would tell you that we are all humans and we're all in this human experience together. And hopefully by studying or talking about or sharing the experiences that we have, whether or not that you are a guy from Kentucky like myself, or my very good friend Abe, who is from Zimbabwe, or anyone else on this planet, we are all sharing this human experience together, right? So there's no such thing as straying from my lane or anything like that, because we're all in this life, especially in a world that we have created that draws us even more closely together. So we want to be straying and going into say, hey, why shouldn't I learn about this woman or this man or this other person or these other folks or these sharks that can't stop eating people in 1975 or anything else like that, right? So I don't know that there's anything that we can't say is off topic. Now, I would tell you that the number one most important thing for me when we look at these films and so forth is inclusivity, right? Because we have a whole world of people to talk about. And most, a lot of movies that come out of Hollywood are headlined by straight white men. And that's okay. That's fine. There's no problem with that. I'm a straight white guy and that's great. But there are also other people out there, right? And I want the movies that we watch to reflect the people who watch them. Right. So that's really important to me, is the diversity in the people who we see. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to get all of those types of things together. Right. And part of that is what's being created in Hollywood and elsewhere, these film studios, and also what's available via the platforms in which we show them on, which right now are Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime. The latter two just being added within the last year. So there's that, but I also want to be able to show in these films, right, not just the diversity of people represented, but diversity of experiences, right? So I don't want every film to be an American movie, right? Most of them are going to be, but we also want to talk about France or China or Africa or Australia or some other place, and different eras and time periods. We don't want everything to be a World War II film. World War II films are important. We watched Saving Private Ryan over the weekend. But can we talk about Jim Crow New Orleans via Princess and the Frog, right? Can we talk about France, with The King or anything like that? But also, not every single film can be a really heavy movie. We watched Lincoln. We watched a film called Mudbound very early on, which takes place in a post-World War II United States. It's very heavy into treatment of African Americans, this brutal treatment of African Americans, which unfortunately continues to be part of our American struggle, right? But not every movie can be super heavy. Sometimes they've got to be light and they've got to be fun, and we've got to be able, we used Step Brothers one weekend just to talk about family, right? So I want the movies to be diverse and fun and kind of bounce around as far as who's being represented, the stories that are being told, the lessons we're talking about, and also the tone of the things that we're talking about. Because again, not every single movie can be a big, heavy film. Not every single movie can be a comedy, right? There's a balance that you want to be able to try to find. And I try to make sure that I'm always listening. I always tell people, please tell me the things that you want to watch, right? Do we want to watch a film about pedagogy? Do we want to watch Stand and Deliver? Do we want to watch Dead Poet Society? What are we going to watch at Halloween, right? What kind of film? Do we watch The Witch, or whatever? These things matter. And over the course of time, it started to change the ways in which I understood what films were, what kind of what's a movie or what's a history movie? Because you're absolutely right? I went into this thinking, history movies are Lincoln, Marie Antoinette, right? The Great Escape, something like that. Those are history movies. No, Coco is a history film. Trading Spaces is a history film, right? These are important things to talk about, right? Because we can use films to talk about all sorts of different things, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
All right, love it. So when historians are kind of reading about dead people, you're suggesting that the categories of analysis we're looking at it through the framework of, class or gender or race or something. Like we can bring that to the table when we're reading or viewing Step Brothers.
Sure, absolutely, right? I mean, we can talk about people of the past, very much in the present, but also why these films get made in the first place. And what does this tell us about a society in which these movies are being made and marketed and consumed in 1985, in 1965, 1975, 2021, right? Why are these movies being made? What's drawing them? Because ultimately, film houses are trying to make movies that are going to be profitable, right? Sure, they want to make some important films and things like that, but ultimately the idea of any business is to make money, and that's okay. But what does it tell us about a society that in 1975, this book about a shark and fear does what it does? And what does it do to society? There's not a single person here. We're on the Treasure Coast in Florida, if you're watching this from far away, right? That we dips our toes in the water to this day and don't immediately hear John Williams score. So there's all kinds of different ways that we can use them, just like the books that you see behind me, right? Books are tools. Reading a book is not necessarily an endorsement of the ideas contained within said book. Just like watching a film, you can watch a movie and say, I don't necessarily accept or reject the premise of this or whatever, right? But you can understand the motivations behind it. You can understand how it affected people. We did a very controversial film recently called Rain Man, right? Which came out late 1980s. won all sorts of Academy Awards, and has a very divisive record amongst different people that I totally respect, right? Many people, many members of the autistic community really don't like the film. And actually I took some flack over deciding to show it because of the negative connotations that they said they went through because of the film. And I totally respect that, right? It was really the very first time I'd ever had any pushback over a film choice. At the same time, right? You've got to be able to look at films and say, wait a second, what are the goods? What are the bads that come from this? And be able to sit down and talk about that. Because as a historian, that's the job, is to look at life and say, what do we learn from this, right? If there's any one thing that, I've really come to believe, is that the past is still very much the present. Yeah, we've had people who have gone, who have lived their lives and gone, but their lives affect our lives that we live today, And if we think now about the kind of ancestors that we want to be to our future generations, right? After I pass away, the things that I did in this life are going to affect the lives that come after me, and I'm cognizant of that. So I do very much believe that it's even though we're rooted in the past as historians, we can use these films to talk about ourselves and understand just who are we, what are we doing. So that's part of the idea.
I guess I didn't realize that, watching Nicolas Cage movies had such like existential implications as far as our place. Love it.
Well, it tells you the importance of carrying lemons on you all the time, because if they didn't have the lemon juice, we've got a movie that lasts about 25 minutes and he goes to jail, right? So for those of you who have not seen National Treasure. But no, look, Nick, like National Treasure itself. Why is history fun? That's a movie. Why are these mysteries so important to Nicolas Cage? What's involved with myth making and so forth, right? Why are Americans so invested in the founders? We hear this all the time in our current political discourse. The founders imagined this, the founders imagined that, the framers said this, the framers said that. So forth. Why does that continue to affect the things that we say and do some 240 years later, or whatever it is? Why does that matter? So again, it kind of goes to point to point to the relevance of like the past as very heavy influence on our lives.
Thank you. I'll turn briefly to some of the comments we're getting in the chat box, and thanks for offering them. I hope we get more as we go. Rachel's offered that she loves the idea of questioning what a history movie is and the idea of using movies to understand historiography. So glad that's resonating.
Yeah, that didn't become aware to me. And it's a great question, Rachel. And it's a thing that I started to think about when we did Trading Places, right? So we did Trading Places back, I think it was like the fifth film. I called the Trading Spaces earlier. The Trading Places back in I think the fifth film that we ever did, right? And I wanted to do something fun and so forth. And I'm like, okay, how can we use this to talk about, this is not a quote unquote history film, right? But here we are 30 some odd years removed from this film. And like, wait a second, this is a snapshot into 1984 America. Here we are, we can see the clothes that are worn, very superficially, we can see the clothes that are worn. We can see what people look like, how they, acted and so forth, right? We can talk about like norms at the time. If you watch that film, you see the ways in which racial, sexual, stereotypes are joked about, spoken about, and these are the norms. These are expectations. So it becomes very much a cultural, a social history. And then ultimately, right, we get this great classic idea of like, how are Americans viewing like quote unquote this American dream, right? This idea of capitalism, right? Because ultimately in Trading Places, the whole idea is that they're trying to get back at the two bad guys who did them wrong. They're trying to make them poor, right? So is this an indictment of capitalism? Or is it an endorsement? Because these two guys and Jamie Lee Curtis and their butler, Denholm Elliott, all pull their money together to find themselves rich at the end of this film, right? So what is this trying to tell us about the American dream? Because ultimately, people are going to go to watch this movie hoping to see a satisfying conclusion to the movie that they're watching, right? So again, wow, you want to learn about 1984 You want to learn about 1980s United States? Let me introduce you to Eddie Murphy. We could talk about him, So yeah, absolutely. You can do all kinds of things. Everything is a history film.
After hearing all that, I feel like I misread the movie because I took away to just invest in concentrated orange juice, and I feel like that explains why now I'm so broke. I guess
Let's go and pick one from the tree down here in Florida, right? But yeah.
Great. Austin is saying now that you're expanding the HATM ecosystem to include Prime and Disney Plus, he's putting in a request for Lord of War with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I actually love that film. I would 100%. There's also that, and there's also another very similar film called War Dogs that's available on Netflix. But yeah, Lord of War with Nicolas Cage and Jared Leto in that film. It's a fun movie to watch, right? And yeah, absolutely. I actually want to do that. And it took me a while to come around to doing Amazon Prime. To do. Originally, I'd only wanted to keep films on Netflix. We kept films exclusively on Netflix until last July when Hamilton finally hit Disney Plus, and I was like, "This is too big. We're going to open it up." Everyone's watching The Mandalorian anyway, so most people have got a subscription to Disney Plus at this point in time. They own us through the various universes that they own. But I had always thought, let's at least keep the platform the same, so same time, same hashtag. Same channel, if you will, Twitter, HATM, 8 p.m. Sunday night, Netflix. All you have to do is find the movie. I don't want people going, oh, wait, are we on Hulu tonight? Or are we on Amazon? Or we're never going to Hulu. I can't stand it. And I have a Hulu subscription. No, we're not doing it. But we did just move on to Amazon Prime because, boy, they've got a much larger selection of like historical movies that people have been asking about. So yeah, I do actually want to show that film, and I'm looking
in the spirit of taking a request, I'll also pass on a request for the 1992 musical Newsies with a young and dreamy Christian Bale, if memory serves.
Yeah, so, Newsies has been asked for a lot, so I'm very much looking forward to getting that one on board. We're showing far too many musicals on HATM already, which would be one musical would be too many for me. But okay, this is not we'll watch the movies where I'm just like, oh man, I cannot stand this movie, but the crowd wants it. So Halloween, I can't stand horror movies. I don't like them. I'm the biggest chicken there is. I don't like horror movies at all. But Halloween, we're gonna get something scary. We've done The Witch and Scream, and I think we did Poltergeist last year for that, and that was a terrifying moment for me. But yes, absolutely, Newsies is one we want to do.
Terrific. I'll turn the conversation briefly to not so much movies, but rather the social media component of this. My take on it is there's a lot of going on here. It strikes me that historians are uniquely well positioned to kind of wade through the tidal wave of misinformation online because, maybe more than anything, history is like a way of thinking and seeing and evaluating and discerning in a way that I feel like our culture really could use when it comes to asking questions about sourcing the piece of information put in front of you or looking for corroborating evidence. These are, on one hand, these are historical thinking, but on the other hand, this not what modern technological literacy requires?
Yeah, I think it's what the profession demands, and it's a thing that I've really wrestled with in my career as I went through graduate school and kind of started to find who am I as a historian, right? What is my role, and how do I feel like the role of activist historians or something along those lines? And the way I see it now, as I've come to understand the profession and really just kind of my place in the world, is that it's not enough to sit on the sidelines. And we all have these gifts. For those of you who are out there who are coming to this thing from whatever profession or passion that you have in this world, right? We all have these gifts that we're hopefully going to contribute to society, because keeping that from everyone else who might be that's hurting us all, right? Whether if you're a piano player or an actor or an electrician or whatever it is that you do and you do well. Share that with society, and there's a role for you there. At least I believe so. And with historians, again, I think a lot of people again have this misunderstanding about what it is that we do. I talk to my friends like, oh, you're a historian, you deal in the past. I'm like, no, I deal in the now, in the future. I use the past. I understand the past so we can talk about now. And for me to see information, of course, Twitter and social media, we all have the uncle at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever shows up, has his or her ideas, her uncle, whatever. That's the obligation, to have this knowledge, to have this understanding. And I don't know everything about anything, right? But I know some things about things. Have we done Hocus Pocus? We have not yet, but it's on the short list. We get a lot of questions. I'm hoping to do it this year. Pardon me. I think you owe it to the people that you serve. And I think that as a historian, we serve a broader community, right? We serve a global community. I'm going to dedicate my life to learning the past and share it with others, to intervene, to wade into these battles and say, no. When you see someone saying, abusing the past and abusing the memory and really abusing the life that was lived by a person to suit their needs, and you have to say, no, that's not what happened here. That's not the lesson we pull from this. There's a very real, the stakes couldn't be higher when we think about it, because ultimately we get 75, maybe 80 years on this earth, right? If what we do doesn't matter, right, then why are we here? And as historians, it's our job to guard that legacy and to say, look, these things happened. And because they happened, we are here now. And we have to be able to take this and apply this to the future, right? So that the people that come after us, our children, our grandchildren, the people that we love, right, can learn from all of this. So I think absolutely, I always tell other historians, if you're not on social media, get off your butt and go. There is a war that's being fought over the memory of the past, and it's up to historians to get in there and say, this is the way.
Yeah, thank you. Your comments remind me, or I wonder if the fact that what you're offering, which are some pretty hard-hitting truths and big questions, they're coming in the context of something as, astutely silly, like a Nicolas Cage movie or whatever, Hocus Pocus. I wonder if that is an asset. I'm thinking of Bill Cronin at Madison, kind of one of the founders of environmental history, your field and mine. And, a few years back, he had a blog that was pretty political, and it got the attention of the state legislature in Wisconsin. And then now his office computer is being subpoenaed by the state capitol. It got real weird real fast, because here's an academic passing judgment on contemporary stuff. It was clean water stuff. I don't even remember the details. I wonder if what you're describing is an opportunity to bring kind of a similar prophetic voice about the state of affairs, but it's in the context of like a Disney movie. And so it's not perceived as, threatening.
Sure. Right. I'm hoping that with what HATM can do is by having other historians tweet about films and things. And ultimately, I wanted this to be a fun thing. I don't want this to be a lecture every Sunday night. That's not the idea behind HATM. The idea was that this can break down bridges, or at least that's what it became, between yourself and this historian who teaches about history of the West at UC Irvine or something like that, right? And now you get to, Professor Smith loves Dirty Dancing, right? I also love Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey films. I like Red Dawn as well, whatever it is, right? But I think by saying, oh, okay, well, now I can follow this person. I can get introduced by his or her thoughts. Maybe you follow Adam Blackler, who teaches about the German history, and he teaches up at the University of Wyoming, and you follow him because he helped lead us through the film Defiance a couple of years ago, and so forth, right? So I'm hoping that that's part of what this can do. that HATM can do is open up some of these avenues to where we can, we can introduce and talk about ideas that are different, just a different way, and there's a few different things here, right? Professor Cronin is is tenured professor of history at one of the finest institutions in not only the United States, in the world. His books are foundational, right? Foundational studies, not for just environmental history, but for, historical methodology and so forth. He's a legend. I've got several of his books. In fact, a couple copies of the same book over my left shoulder right now, Nature's Metropolis. We can't all be Bill Cronin, right? I can't write Nature's Metropolis. I'm not that talented, right? But what I can do is tell you about movies, and I can tell you about history, and hopefully open your eyes to other historians whose interests you might find interesting, right? And then from there we can learn, right? So again, I'm just trying to use HATM as a fun way to talk about things that we all love, and hopefully create a community that is, again, welcoming and giving. And I know it sounds easy. It's easy to be cynical in 2021, but I really do mean this is a safe space for everyone. That you are welcome here in this place for these 2 hours, right? Come here, sit down on the couch, grab your popcorn, and watch a movie with your friends, right? And we'll talk about some history, and it'll be kind of cool. Maybe we'll learn something, and if not, maybe we'll just laugh, right? That's the idea behind this.
I like it. In that vein, Rachel has a comment or a question very much on that idea. She says, speaking of the duty of historians, what do you think is the responsibility of filmmakers to create historical fiction based on true story movies? I work in museum education, and I feel like my life would be a lot easier if Disney's Pocahontas did not exist.
Sure, right? Okay, yeah, definitely, right? And that gets down to like this big thing, and I think this is the amazing thing about what libraries in the 21st century can allow us to do if we think about what libraries are and so forth, right? As well. And I'm going to kind of try to see if I can tie some of these ideas up together. When we think about history, I think one of the things we have to understand is most people get their understandings of history from film. We ingest it at an extremely early age, really through films targeted like Pocahontas, like Little Mermaid or something like that. There's even something like The Patriot, right? The Mel Gibson film about the American Revolution. And these films kind of color and shape how we start to understand American history. And of course, we can sit in front of our instructors in middle and high school and college and so forth and learn the finer details about any number of things as we go along, but film has a very powerful effect on how we understand the past. And I absolutely get that, right? So you're a filmmaker and you want to make a movie about the past, right? What obligations do you have? Well, there's that old adage, right? Never let facts get in the way of telling a good story, right? And if that were the case, boy, that Disney film that Pocahontas film would not exist. It's hard for me to say what obligations an artist has, right? An artist's job is to tell a story from his or her own point of view. And then our job as historians is to kind of contextualize that, right? So if you want to make The Patriot, go right ahead, have fun with it, right? Go tell the story that you're trying to tell. But as a historian, I'm going to have to sit down and be the guy that says, well, wait a second. All of these free African Americans living on a plantation in South Carolina because they just wanted to be there because Mel Gibson's a great guy. Something smacks me as a little odd here. And why are we telling that story, right now? So I do think that there's a certain level of obligation, right? You can't just go off and tell these hugely farcical stuff. And you're absolutely right. Like Pocahontas itself, the film, I can't even get myself all the way through it. I'd like to see more films that are traditionally historical in nature because of their power. I'd like to see people trying to honor the past, but I have a hard time telling artists what to do. Artistry is something that is beautiful, and it's a reason for life. It's just as important as history because it's a way of expressing our human condition. I don't have an easy answer on that one. I really don't. I would like to see people make some real clear choices and do some real thinking about what it is that they're portraying and the story they're trying to tell. Because as we've seen with films like Gone with the Wind, right? Gone with the Wind may be the single most damaging film made in the 20th century. If not that, then certainly Birth of a Nation, right? To tell these stories of the antebellum South or the post-Civil War United States, and paint a really distorted, ugly picture of slavery or freedmen, freed women's lives that really continued to affect how race relations evolved in the United States throughout the 20th and into the 21st century. I feel like it's a really long-winded, winding answer because there's not a real good answer here. I would say that there is an obligation to deeply consider the past and the stories that we're trying to tell, and why someone is deviating from a particular truth of the past, why that is, right? Because in some cases that may have to happen to tell the story, but I think probably some deep introspection would be great.
I wonder if, being equipped with the kind of historical thinking skills that, we've been mentioning, makes movies like an especially powerful opportunity to kind of ask those questions about what is the motivation, who's the audience. I mean, ultimately, I guess we're talking Hollywood profit at the end of the day. These are tools of capitalism, ultimately, I suppose. I mean, if you're not turning a profit, I imagine you won't get invited to continue making too many movies.
Well, it's just like any book that we'd be reading as well, right? Or a news story, or getting back, or even coming out to, like, say, the George Floyd trial that's being released, the Derek Chauvin trial, over the George Floyd murder, right? And the events surrounding his death. Who's telling the stories? Who has the power to tell the story? And who gains from the stories that are told, right? We can use this kind of situational awareness when we think about films, think about the books in front of us, think about the lives that we're living, the stories that were being told by our friends and neighbors or the people in front of us. So questioning this and having a good, healthy questioning of films can help us to help that as well.
That's good. Thank you. A couple more comments. Nikki says, have you done Tombstone? There's an extensive list of movies that tell the story of the OK Corral.
I can tell you that I think I've watched Tombstone about 150 times, and that might be low. I think my best friend at the time, Mike Phillips, and I must have worn out that VHS tape at his grandmother's house when we were kids in the late 90s when they came out. 100% we're going to be doing Tombstone at some point in time. That is one of the most quotable, memeable, gifable films out there. It's got a powerful way of telling that story. And it's got a cultural resonance, right? A lot of people love that movie, so let's take it and let's have some fun and watch it. Absolutely. What can we take from Tombstone? Why is this story? Why is Tombstone so much better and more fun to watch than Wyatt Earp, Kevin Costner's 45-hour epic of the same thing? No, I absolutely want to do Tombstone. As soon as Amazon Prime or Netflix or Disney Plus gets it, I'm all in.
Excellent. Good. Well,
I guess I'll say I'll be your Huckleberry.
I'll be your Huckleberry.
Yeah, I'll be your Huckleberry.
A question from Nikki, or a comment. She says there's a podcast called Rom-Com Killjoyers. 2 female PhD candidates do it, and they talk about romantic comedies. That sounds great. Very simpatico.
Yeah, definitely.
Terrific. Cool. A word or two maybe about social media, because that's kind of the other half of this dynamic. Isn't it an inherently, or I should say, discussions seem to universally degenerate to fundamentally negative places? Has HAT been able to stay positive, or assuming that's your objective, to what extent are you able to resist that kind of tendency that, as far as I can tell, feel free to disagree, more or less every thread seems to head to less fun places?
Yeah. Yeah, social media, especially Twitter, can devolve, and you see these fights all the time. And boy, the distance allowed by social media to say really nasty things with really very little repercussion has led to some really nasty, so, engagements. And I know a lot of people love social media because it's so depressing, right? They're tired of seeing the fighting and this, that, and the other. And not to make this conversation go too deep into the metaphysics of life, but really, in a lot of ways, your perception determines your reality, right? I am going to actively choose to uplift the people around me. Now, I'm not always going to succeed in that, but I genuinely mean it. I've been on this planet now 43 years. And somewhere along the lines, I decided it's like, I want to be a voice of good things. Now, I'm not always going to be. I'm going to fail. I'm a human being, and forgiveness, self-forgiveness to that is part of the learning process, I think, of any human being. I would tell my students that as well. Learn to forgive yourself. It's a really difficult thing to do. But with all the negativity out there, I was like, you know what? I can be a voice of positive thing, because I think HATM is a positive and good thing. We're bringing people together, doing things that I think are fun. They make people happy, and we talk about things that I think matter. That's a good thing, and I want to continue to do that. So realistically, when I see somebody that, and this has happened maybe twice in 3 years, had something negative to say throughout the thousands and thousands of interactions that we've had now, I just ignore it, because ultimately that kind of person is going to go off and go be negative someplace else when they don't get that kind of that feedback that they're looking for. And look, I legitimately hope that people are happy, and if they're not, one of the hard things in the world is getting comfortable with the fact that not everyone's going to like the things that you do, right? I'm just not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on my little world, and and try to be a positive voice. And as long as people continue to like HATM or like the things that I have to say, then I'll keep saying them. As long as I feel that they're true to the values that I hold dear in life. And that's ultimately be a good person, try to uplift others, and go forward.
Oh, thank you. That was. I'll take that away. That was kind of moving. Love it. All right, now I'll just find a snippet in there, put it on a keychain or a fridge magnet. I like it. Good. Um, sure. So this evening tonight is hosted by a library. You are a devotee of libraries. Your partner is a librarian. I am an advocate of libraries. The lifeblood of libraries, the disposition is all about the free flow of information and ideas, and not limiting information. Maybe that's the way to phrase it. HATM certainly seems consistent with that ideal. Maybe it's another branch in kind of this larger, maybe worldview is the way to put it, this principle of kind of like radical democracy of information. I don't know. I don't have a question so much as kind of a comment to offer. Like, this seems very much like a, a tool, a community, maybe is the way to put it, in that spirit. Does that ring true for you?
I think so. If I can kind of put in a plug for the Martin County Library System here, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm a fan of libraries. And it wasn't until, I met my partner, Natalie, who really introduced me to libraries. She's a librarian in Colorado and does these amazing things out there. And I didn't really understand what a library does until she showed me. Right. And these libraries, and we joke around this, I say this all the time, and she gets a big laugh out of it. I call them community hubs, because they really are these places, right? They're these places for communities. It's not just about checking out books or checking out a video or something like that, which certainly you can do, right? These are places where you can hold meetings, where you can learn a language, where you can gather, you can distribute information, right? They are in maybe a pre-Twitter social network in a lot of different ways, right? That's where you get your information. That's where you can come together. That's where you can share with others who hold similar viewpoints or different viewpoints, or learn from people who have these similar different viewpoints. So I think in some ways, yeah, definitely, right? It's a place where information and people are ultimately gathering together. It's kind of cool when you think about it.
Agreed. That's terrific. Good. Yeah. From the audience, feel free to drop in a couple more comments or questions. We'd be very happy to take it. Okay. Well, maybe you can share a little bit about your personal fields. Like what are your interests, professionally or personally?
Sure. Yeah. So I went, as you said earlier, I'm finishing my PhD at the University of Minnesota with a focus on Native American history. I'm writing an early history of the Seminole Tribe of Florida, in the really focusing on the late 18th and early 19th centuries, really focusing in actually on the strangest of animals, cows. And for those of you who have been around Florida at all, you'll see that if you go into the interior of Florida, this is a very heavy agricultural state. And I don't think that people outside the peninsula really have a good appreciation for just how intensive agriculture is here in Florida. But in addition to cattle, we have citrus, and we certainly have sugarcane as well, south of Lake Okeechobee and so forth. And I had some really wonderful opportunities to attend some great universities. And I ended up going to Minnesota because of the Native American studies focus up there. And I've been really kind of blessed by learning from some of the absolute best folks in the business there. And I hope that my work can kind of reflect some level of their expertise. And if not that, patience with me in finishing. So, my question that I'm really kind of asking is how does a society, right? How does a group of people rally around a particular natural resource? And, cattle might seem a little odd to focus on. They're not as charismatic as grizzly bears or horses or bison or anything like that. But, I think that if you read through the literature and you talk to tribal members today, the Seminole Tribe of Florida has the fourth largest cattle producing business in the state, 12th largest in the country. They'll tell you, we've always been cow people. And that's an important thing, is to understand what this animal means, because I think part of in getting the story out there, I've been really blessed to get to know some really terrific folks and members of the tribe. And I don't come here as to speak for the tribe. And I'm always careful to delineate that I don't speak for the tribe at all when it comes to HATM or anything like that. But I can tell you that, I've been told by folks is, hey, these are stories that we'd like to have told. Right. And I think that being an ally in Indian country is really important, especially when you consider that here we are in South Florida and Treasure Coast on these traditional homelands of Seminoles, Miccosukees, Ais, Tequestas, Calusas, if you're on the Southwest coast, and elsewhere. Right. This is native land. This is indigenous land. All lands in the United States are. Right. So being a good ally means going and listening and sharing some of these stories and telling some of these stories, or at least applying the things that I can do in service of the tribe, and hopefully people will like that. So that's part of what I do with my own professional research, and certainly as an ethnographer for the tribe as well. I get to meet and get to talk to some really amazing folks and help tell these stories, right? That are again part of the human experience.
Thank you. Well, I think we're all looking forward to reading your dissertation when it's goes from manuscript to a book.
I'm just looking forward to the dissertation done. I got about 25 pages to write, so we're looking at a completed 25, 30 pages to write. We're going to be done soon, so that's exciting.
Terrific. So. Good. We've got a question here from Rachel. Rachel says, do you find with historians at the movies that most people are part of one central conversation or thread, or is it smaller clusters? Has this changed over time? Have you found that a specific genre has its own kind of tweeting style? It's a cool question.
Yeah, it actually is. Definitely, I think people tend to tweet all over the place. There are certain things that will be, and we've got some certain regulars that will come along and ask certain types of questions. We got a good buddy of mine, Jake Blackwell, who really breaks down the film, who's studied, who's done what, and blah, 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 and all these different kinds of things. And there's people, but then you'll get the specialists, right, who will kind of pop in for like a medieval film or a film on African American history or this, that, and the other. And I like to try to, if I can, invite along maybe a featured tweeter, if you can, to kind of tweet along with the film, right? So I think Matt Gabriel, who does the Middle Ages in Europe, he tweeted along when we did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and stuff like that. So we kind of had an expert on the line, if you will. And people could kind of talk to him. So, but unfortunately, I do this for free. This is not a thing that I do to make money or anything like that. Not that I don't appreciate the Martin County Library's attention, and all of you guys for joining in. I just do this because people like it. So I can't always like line somebody up. And frankly, sometimes I just don't know who the expert is. In like when we did. Film on Irish nationalism in the mid 1800s, I didn't know who to go to and stuff like that. So a lot of times these conversations will kind of break into smaller little groups, and then there'll be kind of a couple overriding themes. Or sometimes people will just start reacting to like the big picture stuff. The cool thing is, and the nights when HATM is the best, is when you're watching a film that's not new, when people have a real tie to the film. And the best thing I can explain this to you would be, I'm going to come back to it. Jaws. Another great night would be Jurassic Park, because everybody in the world remembers what it was like when they're watching Jurassic Park on the big screen, and Dr. Grant is in the Jeep and they're rolling up there, and all of a sudden you see those brachiosauruses, and you remember the movie, you remember the scene. I guarantee all of you guys are sitting there watching, and you can hear the music in the background just right now, right? And people start talking about, I was here when this was. I was 18. I was 27. I was with my boyfriend at the time. Whatever. I remember how this movie made me feel and why I wanted to go off and do X, Y, or Z. Right. So those moments when people have a very real personal connection, people start sharing about that, and we get to have these real human moments on HATM. That's like the most gratifying for me, because I really enjoy when people start talking about how they relate to a film and how it made them feel and how it changed the ways they live their lives afterwards.
Love it. Love it. I have that experience with Jurassic Park. What a riot.
Yeah.
The last day of 8th grade. I'm 41. The blonde girl in the movie lived in my town, and I was hoping she would come to the movie to watch it, and she did not. But that's funny. Yeah. Terrific. Okay. Well, then, as we're kind of coming to the back end of this, maybe you can offer us maybe some reflections or comments on just the nature of community in a time of pandemic. Has that changed historians at the movies? I mean, it seems on the surface well placed to kind of write out something like that. Online community is at best tricky. And so, maybe you can offer some comments on this, in the context.
COVID's been difficult for most of us, right? I would imagine all of us who have been here and anybody's watching this after the fact, right? And has expressed to us in a lot of different ways the importance or the magnitude of relationships in our lives, whether or not you've been cooped up in the house for 14 months with your significant other, and oh my God, I can't get away from him, and he snores all night or whatever, right? Or if you have not seen a partner in a long time, or maybe unfortunately you've had a family member pass away that you couldn't go to the funeral or visit in a hospital when he or she or they were hurting, right? And because of that, maybe you don't get to see your friends and you don't have those barbecues last year. I know I certainly didn't, and I like to see my friends. Humans are social creatures. That's what movies do. It's what movies tell us, right? They're always about the interactions, the engagements that humans have with one another. And that's the reason why we come back and see these things. So, one of the really gratifying things to me about HATM is when I would talk to folks about movies and HATM, and I got to tell you, there were times when I thought, maybe I'm tired of this. I'm tired. I don't want to watch a movie every Sunday, blah, blah, blah. I get tired too, But people would continually come back and say, hey, this is giving me a thing to look forward to on Sunday nights. This is a thing I look forward to doing. I enjoy doing this with you and with the rest of the community. And it helps tie me to other people. And I don't know, I don't think that our lives are meant to be lived alone, right? Or else why would we be having these discussions about history and life and so forth? So in a lot of different ways, this little thing of ours, now I'm calling it the mafia, Cosa Nostra, right? Our little thing. We did Godfather 1 and 2 back to back one night. Oh my gosh, that was 6 hours, way too long. But I think that HATM and other things like it, maybe it's a podcast that you like to listen to, or a TV show, or whatever it is that you can do with somebody else. I think that these things serve as outlets and maybe help us to not feel alone in the time that it's very easy to feel alone. And being alone can be really, really scary. So if folks feel like this is providing an outlet in their lives and making them feel good about their lives, or giving them something to look forward to, that really means a lot to me. It's going to do more good, I think, than a lot of the other things that I might ever do. Right? I want my life to be about a man who helped bring people together, and this is a little way we can do it. And hopefully once COVID's over, we'll all have a big barbecue and it'll be great. We'll be all on the beach together. But until then, this is a little way we can do things.
Thank you. That's terrific. Love it. Well, as we kind of come to the end, if anyone in the audience wants to throw in a last question or two, or comment, we'd be delighted to take it.
Questions, comments, insults, mostly for Nat. Don't insult me. I had her.
Yeah, I am. I do not endorse that comment. Yeah. But I'm out of questions myself. I think this is a really neat community. Sometimes it's a fun chance to interact with actors and movie makers for the movies that you're watching. So like me personally, I think that is just pretty darn cool watching, what was it, La Bamba, and interacting with Lou Diamond Phillips while we're
that was crazy. When Lou Diamond Phillips like jumped in while we were watching La Bamba, and then he followed me. I was like, whoa, I could talk to Lou Diamond Phillips when I want. And then I'm like, Jason, don't abuse the privilege, right? I was like, that's been a really cool thing when folks come in and start tweeting along, when the director of Moonlight jumped in and started tweeting along that night, and we're watching this film, we're talking about that, so yeah, that's always been fun. It's been a cool thing for our audience.
That's cool. Especially that was the person that like we invited to HATM and accidentally invited La La Land, or
yeah.
Oh, no. That was a weird reference. Good. Good. Well, I'll turn it to Casey, but it looks like we're on the back end. Thanks so much for those of you who are participating in this discussion. I've had a good time. And thank you, Casey, and the Martin County Library System for inviting us to have this discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Nat. Thank you, Jason. Thank you to the friends. Thanks for everybody participating in the chat. Everybody's saying thank you to both of you gentlemen. This was great. My cheeks hurt from smiling. And I'll just say thanks, Jason, for creating a welcome space for people online, just like what you'd said, and bringing your passion here to us tonight. So
thank you very much.
we will, actually,